Alright guys, welcome back to the channel where today we're going to be covering the new 1.03 patch for WWE 2K20, as this patch was said to contain a whole bunch of fixes for characters, universe mode, creations, gameplay. There's a whole list of things that have been addressed, although addressed doesn't necessarily mean fixed, so I figured I would go through the entire list and test it out to see what is fixed, what isn't fixed, and if there's anything else that wasn't listed in the patch notes. So starting out with the general section, the first thing listed on the patch notes was addressed reported crashes throughout the game, which was extremely vague as there's no specifics given in regards to which crashes were fixed. However, from playing the game, I encountered 5 crashes in around the 3 to 4 hours that it took to go through and test the patch, so while they may have fixed some crashes, there are definitely still a lot of problems there. Next up, we have addressed reported opacity issue causing invisible cast parts, which was the glitch that was being used with the headdresses to make them invisible and then create short-haired superstars. However, this is now fixed, therefore that glitch will no longer work. Addressed reported crashes in custom arenas using imported images. This was one that I tested out by having an 8-man match in a custom arena with custom logos. However, 13 minutes into the entrances, the game crashed, confirming that this one isn't actually fixed. Next we have improvements to sweat, which I guess you can say there is an improvement when you consider that sweat was removed entirely in the previous patch, so having it back is technically an improvement. However, what I found was that although you can see the superstars sweating as the match goes on, all of the sweat then disappears for the winning scene, so this one technically isn't working right either. Addressed reported input settings not saving was something that I tested on the PC version, and this did seem to work, so I'm guessing this one is now also fixed. Moving on to characters, the first fix is listed as general improvements to hair and cloth behaviour. However, when I tested this one out, I found that the hair is still really stiff during gameplay for a lot of the women, and that Charlotte's WrestleMania model still defies gravity when performing the figure 8. However, her current model does have some physics applied to it, but it's still a long way from being perfect. As for the men, I tried out Dolph Ziggler's model, as his hair is one that I found to be really bad previously, and what I found was that this is still exactly the same following the patch, as the hair will constantly glitch around and become blocky during gameplay. As for the cloth mechanics, I decided to add Chad Gable's robe to his entrance and see if it flowed any better. However, this was still the result, plus he also had creation parts like the Fiend's jacket looking incredibly stiff and sticking out, so I would say that this one isn't fixed either. Next we have addressed reported concerns with missing hair and cloth throughout the game, which again, because it's so vague, it's hard to know what they fixed. However, when I viewed Trent Seven during his tag team entrance, half of his beard is still missing, so I can't say that this one is fixed either. In better news though, the mention of addressing concerns with images failing to be displayed properly on a superstar's attire appears to be fixed, as I tested out applying multiple logos to Baron Corbin and then loaded him up in game to find that they were all still in the right place, so hopefully that's the same with the rest of the superstars too. Addressed reported concerns of a crash when using DLC cast parts for my players also seemed fine when I tested it, as I tried applying a bunch of the Bump in the Night and the Smackdown DLC parts, and these seemed to work fine both in the creation suite and in game, although again, because they didn't say which parts were affected, I can't say for certain without trying every single part. The same can also be said for the next one, as they also address concerns with male face paint colours changing in game, as they never said which face paint was affected. However, I did try applying a bunch of different ones in the creation suite, and I found that they all appeared to be the same when I loaded them up in game. Addressed reported concerns with cast parts that may cause hair to float with certain superstars definitely isn't one that's fixed, as the first thing I did was test out Jeff Hardy's armbands, and this was the result that I got. Then I went ahead and tested the gold armband for the women, and again the same thing happened with that. However, I did find that they'd fixed the Fiend's jacket so that the hair no longer jumps up when using that one. However, because the other parts are still broken, then this clearly isn't classed as fixed. Addressed reported concerns with assigning locked moves when a user previews and then selects it inside of moveset for my player was sadly something else that was fixed, despite it actually being a benefit rather than a hindrance. However, for anyone that did use this glitch while it worked, then you'll be glad to know that any locked moves that you assign to your my player will still be there after the patch. This next one was a pretty big one for creators, as we had addressed reported concerns for cast t-shirt logos that appear incorrectly in game, and from what I tested, I was pleased to see that this one does appear to be fixed, as I first tried importing the attire from the Corbin test and those logos stayed in place. Then I created a new superstar with a t-shirt and applied a bunch of logos to that one, and they too all remained in the correct place. Moving on to universe mode, we have addressed reported concerns that a crash may occur when selecting a save slot, so I tried loading up various saves and then even creating a new one to load, and I didn't experience any crashes there, so that one too looks to now be fixed. Enabled importing roster and other settings when creating a new universe save was also fixed, as the option to import settings now appears on the universe mode menu when choosing to load or create a new save. Addressed reported concerns that a crash may occur when loading into a match for the first time with several creations, was one that I did find to crash, as this one crashed during the entrances. Addressed reported concerns with 6-man tag match was one that I didn't quite know what the issue was, as they didn't give any details as to what was fixed. However, in the match that I tested, everything seemed to work fine, so maybe this one is fixed, but I can't say for definite without knowing what was wrong in the first place. Addressed reported concerns that a crash may occur when simulating to WrestleMania worked absolutely fine when I tested it, although I would imagine that this may be different depending on how your universe mode is set up. Moving on to gameplay, we have improvements to strike aiming and dash strikes, although I found these to be just as bad as before, especially with running moves. Addressed reported concerns with soft lock-in pin minigame after performing certain moves. Again, because they don't say what moves were affected, it's impossible to see if this is fixed, although from the few moves that I did test that have a pin combo, I didn't see any problems at all. Finally, we have the online section, starting out with addressed reported concerns that a crash may occur in Road to Glory when using DLC cast parts. However, this one was one that I couldn't test as the game couldn't find an opponent. This next one was one of the biggest complaints for the game so far, as we had the inability to download creations with multiple custom images, as the game would never finish downloading the creation. However, you'll be glad to know that this problem is now fixed and creations now complete downloading. Continuing that positivity, there's also good news for created arenas, as they address the issue of those downloading without images or with white textures, as any arena uploaded after patch 1.03 now downloads with all of the images included, as do custom shows. So that's all of the fixes that were noted in the patch notes. However, there was also another fix that wasn't mentioned, as previously when applying a face texture to a creation and then trying to move the eyes or the nose into place, the facial features were tied to the texture, meaning you couldn't realign them. However, this is now fixed following the patch update, and you can now move the eyes, the eyebrows, the nose, etc. all in the right position and then fine tune them using the individual parts, which is a big plus for creators. However, the downside is this only works on new superstars created after the patch, as trying to edit an old superstar that was created before the patch still sees the facial features tied to the actual texture. Alongside the bonus fix to custom face textures, I noticed what could possibly be an update to the blood mechanics, as during the 6-man tag team match that I was testing for one of the universe mode fixes, Adam Cole busted open Kofi Kingston and the screen flashed red as normal, although after watching the match progress there didn't seem to be any sign of it on Kofi. What I then did was I paused the game and I headed into the highlight reel to get a better look, and when I did that I noticed that it suddenly appeared on his face and in his ear. However, rather than the smear effect that had been present prior to the patch, this effect looked a lot more like the old one that's seen it dripping, which gave off a much better effect. I did try letting the match play out to see if any more would appear or if it would start smearing. However, despite getting multiple moves in, it seemed to remain the same for the remainder of the match. Whether this was just a one-off or if this is part of an update to the mechanic remains to be seen. However, I thought it was worth mentioning as it looked a lot better than it did before, and if you find that it doesn't appear by default, then viewing it in the highlight reel might actually let you trigger it manually. So that's all of the updates from the patch, including what worked and what didn't work on console. However, for PC players, it's a completely different story, as not only did they get one patch, they actually ended up with two, as following the release of patch 1.03 on the PC, anyone logging into the game was met with a message that said the game had failed to load and that their save data had been corrupted, with the only option being to then create a new save. Now, after realising the problem, 2K did release a second PC patch to roll the game back to 1.02 so that anyone who had yet to launch the game wouldn't lose their save. However, for anyone that had already lost the save, there was no way to get it back, and the second patch actually caused them to lose the data all over again, meaning anything they'd unlocked after the first patch would then need to be locked yet again. So in regards to that, there is absolutely no defending 2K for releasing such a shoddy patch, as the corrupt message was literally the first thing that would be shown when loading the game, so there's no excuse why the testers didn't flag that up when testing out the patch. So that is the state of the game following this new patch update. Some things are now fixed and we can finally download creations. However, there is still a ton of issues with the game, such as arena parts moving place when saving, people walking through each other in cutscenes, the highlight reel still only recording 6 seconds, numerous crashes, and of course all the things in this video that were supposed to be fixed but ultimately weren't. Anyway guys, that is where I'm going to leave this video, but I hope it gives you a better idea of the state of the game at present. Thanks as always for taking the time to watch, have yourself an awesome day, and I'll catch you later.